Hello and welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Movement podcast powered by Kigyo. This week we have Yvonne Strzys as a guest. How was the pronunciation of that last name, Yvonne?
That was almost perfect.
There we go, almost perfect. Yvonne is Head of Project Development for MaxSolar, focusing on the German market based out of Berlin. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Let's start at the very beginning. You've pretty much been involved in renewables your entire career. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So I had the first contact with the solar system back in my high school time. The parents of my best friends participated in this 1000 roof program back in 1999 and early 2000, so before the EEG even has started. And this was the first rooftop solar system I've ever seen, and I was very, interested in it, and I wanted to learn more about it. So afterwards, I chose to study electric engineering with a focus in renewables.
Yeah, so that's actually like quite a nice segue for people that might be in a similar position themselves. Back in the 2010 or whenever this was, it wasn't such a popular industry. But now, if somebody was in the same position, they might have the option to do the same. What would you tell anybody that was kind of considering renewables as a profession they wanted to study?
Back then, when I started my studies, it was still quite something new. So it was only a focus in renewables. It was electrical engineering. Nowadays, there are so many different programs, special programs for wind, for solar, for battery, for the electrical vehicle. So it improved a lot there as a whole to get to know the industry. And to me, it was the right decision because it combined like the technical part of the engineering part and to have an impact on something. Like really, you can change something, you have an impact on the energy transition. What we are doing now, especially in Germany and even in the other markets too, like we build up a new infrastructure that we all need and that we will need in future too.
Yeah. And what was the first role, the first job role that you had then after your studies?
After my studies, I made an internship within E.ON, within the asset management of the wind turbine department. It was an international role with a lot of technical support things, but I learned a lot of how to work in a diverse team on different places. That was before Corona, so it wasn't that typical to do a Teams call, wasn't in there yet. And afterwards, I chose to do another master's degree. And that's when I moved from Essen to Berlin. Then I started my first role as a project engineer within a small company in Berlin. And I started with rooftop systems. And now I really progressed myself into different roles, like planning the systems.
Okay, so then you completed your bachelor's degree in Essen. You've done your internship, like first views into the working world. Also in Essen with E.ON. And at that moment, you moved to Berlin to pursue a master's degree. What was the technicality in the master's degree?
There I specialized actually in wind energy, and I was very into that. I even did my master thesis on that. I worked with EDIS back in that time, but the wind industry, they had quite a down movement back then, so it was hard to get a job, even if I really wanted to. But the solar industry had a high at that time, so I started within the solar industry again.
The actual plan was to do a more specific wind study to go into that industry, but it was in a bit of a down moment. So at that moment, you started looking for real work in Berlin. And what was the first job that you got? It was a project developer in Sola, is that right?
No, it was a project engineer. I started as a project engineer for large rooftop systems. So I was planning them. I was involved as a construction site manager. I was involved in the commissioning of these plants and also in the O&M. It was a small company back then, and I really started in leading teams, got them bigger. We really had a lot of projects, so I started to put on the team on the different spots. And then after, let's say 2 years or something like that, everything was done for the rooftop systems because we had the different teams within the company. And then I started, okay, let's go for the next thing and let's go into the large scale ground mountain systems. And that's when I started with the project development.
It was secure energy solutions, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you first worked in the rooftop systems, you had some exposure to growing your own team.
Yes, that's correct. The company had a lot of trust in me. That's something I'm really thankful for because I really could shape the team and the project as I wanted to. And so I really looked for the next challenge within the industry, and this was the ground-mounted solar systems.
Before we get onto the ground-mounted, what was it like, kind of recruiting for talent? What was the renewables job market like at that time when you were kind of growing that team?
Back then, it was not that easy because there weren't so many like engineers already there who already have some experience in the solar field. So we had a lot of people like me who came directly from the university. So they were and still are very motivated, but they didn't have a lot of experience, and you really needed to train them.
Yeah. Okay. And what about going into a world as a junior engineer, as a female? It was and still is, quite daunting for some people because it's widely regarded as a, quote of say, man's world, or certainly was in the past. How was that as a young person in the industry navigating those challenges?
It was challenging, and it still is challenging. Luckily for me, I was like, I think maybe it's 5 years ago, I got involved into this program. It's the Women of New Energies program. And there we really are connected within this program with other women within the engineering sector. Yeah, it's quite good to know the people, to talk to them, because we all have the same kind of challenges within the teams, within the system, with maybe the stakeholders. It's still there. So you need to talk about it.
Yeah, it's like having mentorship or community outside of the workplace, right? Well, I will come back to this topic a little bit when we talk more about your recent experience, but just moving on with secure energy, you kind of, in your own words, took it to the point that you could, and then you moved for what I presume was a bigger role in the ground-mounted solar. Correct.
Yes, I really needed, and I still wanted to go for the next challenge. I kind of succeeded because there's still the rooftop part within secure energy, and there's the ground-mounted part, two big teams, and they have really nice projects ongoing.
And your role was slightly different. You mentioned you came out of the engineering team and went into the development side?
Yes, like I always say, like for the project development, you need like 3 things you need to know. Either you know the technical part, the legal part, so like how to get a project developed, and you need to be good at communication because you have a lot of stakeholders involved. And so what was missing for me was the legal part. I had no experience in that, but that's something I could have learned, and I've learned back then. So that was the challenge I've looked for myself.
How were the challenges there, navigating relatively new industry in the middle of COVID, and also managing your team in that period?
It was interesting and challenging back then. Like when I look back to the municipalities, like we had the presentations there, we had to look for a lot of things, like who's able to go there and present the project, but maybe we are just allowed to be there by one person, but of course we want the manager themselves, and then I wanted to be there too. Sometimes it was allowed, sometimes not. So we really had a lot of difficulties to handle.
Did you see changes from a digital standpoint in how visits were conducted? I presume you weren't having to go to the authorities in person during this period.
There have been a lot of changes between that, because before COVID, like you really needed to go to the municipalities, you needed to be there, like maybe even doing opening hours just to knock on the major's door. And now you can do a lot of this online. So there's less traveling for during the project development time, but we still do that because it's always nice to know the people face to face, and you need to know your project site in real life, and of course you need to know like the circumstances in the village when you want to build the solar plant.
Yeah. Interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Project engineer into project developer is not the most common of paths. Is that right?
Like there are some engineers within my teams who are now project developers. So most of the time they start within project development and then they go into the engineering part.
Yeah, I would have thought, from my perspective, that was a more common transition to than the engineer to the development part.
It's good to know, like from the project development perspective, to know the basic technical things. And one thing that we all really have in mind now is the grid connection of our solar plants, and there you really need to know what the grid connection can do, like, and how you can optimize it. And that's something you don't know as a developer, but you do know as an engineer.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you then grow a team or develop the team in that side of things as well for secure energy? Or were you acting more as a sole contributor?
I did perform within a team. At the very beginning, it was only another engineer and me. We started the whole company kind of, and then there were more people. So we started to grow the planning team, who was only doing the layout, then the commissioning team, the construction team, who's going to go to the site and to look for the construction itself, and of course the O&M team afterwards.
Very, very interesting. So after, I think you've spent 5 or 6 years now with Secure Energy. You made the move into the company that you're with today. How and why did that come about?
So I wanted to have a new challenge for myself again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So after I built up the rooftop teams and the rooftop department for Secure Energy, I started the ground-mounted department for Secure Energy, and then it was kind of all done. It worked quite good. The projects are fine, and then I wanted to go for a next new challenge, and that's why I landed within MaxSolar. For MaxSolar, I'm head of the project development team, so we start with the greenfield usually, and then we lead the project through all the phases until we reach ready to build. And still we are in charge and involved into the projects for the commissioning, the power plant, but we hand over the lead to our own execution teams. So with MaxSolar, we had a huge pipeline in the eastern part of Germany. Yep. And that's why we opened an office in Berlin like 3 years ago. Yes. When I started.
When you started, the office was only just opened, and how many people were you then?
When I started, we were 3 people in Berlin, and now we are like 30.
That's a quite aggressive growth through 3 years. How have you found that with finding people, with keeping people? It's a competitive industry.
Both ways. Like, of course, it's not only project development. This department who are sitting in the Berlin office of MaxSolar. MaxSolar has different teams. For instance, the commercial team is sitting in Berlin as part of the legal team too, part of the sales team. So it's really diverse. And yeah, it's like you need to look for people. You need to have a good, let's say, mix of value them and let them have challenge for themselves in their work life.
Every year is different, but there's been quite a turbulent period. If you go back to 22-23, the job market was quite aggressive, and a lot of people were getting offers quite easily. What's special about the culture that you've created that's enabled you to actually keep people?
I would say it's the trust we do have within the team. You can come to me or my colleagues with every problem you have, and MaxSolar is quite fast in the market. But sometimes comes with failures. So we are fine if we talk about those and if we do the lessons learned out of these projects then. But that's something you only can do or build out the team when you trust them.
Yeah. And how about the industry in general? Like what, as we sit here today in February 26, how has it kind of changed since you first started?
The industry in general. So it was really more business-like back then when I started. And there were a lot of people who are motivated into doing the work better, having an impact into the world. And still, of course, the technical part was there too. You still needed to be economically feasible, but it wasn't the first thing that they looked onto the project. But now you really need to be economically feasible, and that's something that changed a lot.
Yeah, a bit more maturity and more realism in a way. It's just producing numbers and words doesn't really cut it anymore. There has to be a little more substance behind it. How do you find managing a large team today? Have you managed to keep your team relatively diverse?
I'm trying to. So they're kind of like, especially in Berlin, a lot of female colleagues I do have, what I do like a lot. So yeah, I try to keep it diverse.
Good. It's difficult to do for sure, but good that Berlin in particular makes it a little bit easier for equality. What does your day-to-day look like?
Each day is different, as the market is different each day. It sounds strange, but that's the way it is. Sometimes I'm supporting my people within their project. Sometimes I'm going out to the municipalities or to the landlords or to the site, and sometimes I'm just involved in reporting for the C-level or the board. And on other days, I'm looking for new ideas and how can we optimize the grid connection points for our sites? How can we look for a better infrastructure? How can we connect our different fields like the solar, the wind energy, and the batteries within each other? So it's really diverse, and that's what I do like a lot about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. The grid connection is normally a point that comes up in almost every podcast that we have recorded so far, specifically in your market, the German market, but I think it's even more focused geographically than that, right? It's just kind of Berlin and the east of Germany. Is that right?
For the grid connection points, it's like all projects within Germany, so not only the eastern part. Team-wise, with the municipalities, etc., it's the northern part of Germany, and I always say the northern part from the perspective of a Bavarian company, so everything except Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg.
Just for the listeners, what is the current status of the German grid connection in your key areas or territories?
It's an asset. If you have it, you're quite lucky if you have a grid connection point. You should keep it.
And you're also heavily invested in kind of multi-utility projects. I know you have some BESS projects now, and I think you're busy with both. Is it offshore and onshore wind or just onshore wind?
Just onshore wind. Just like we do have one project, 20 megawatt solar, 20 megawatt wind energy, and the grid connection point is even 20 megawatt grid connection points.
I think in general, the future will be aimed towards multi-utility projects, I would say. What about some of your predictions for the industry in the next couple of years?
Oh, that's quite hard, because if you had asked me the question 5 years ago, I would thought that the industry would have been already mature within the BESS industry. It's still, at least for Germany, something very new within the industry for the grid connection point from the financial side. So in future, there will be something else which we need to connect to our systems too, whatever this might be.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm always surprised by the impact that politics can have on the renewable industry. Even if you consider an administration or even a political campaign to be quite short term in the grand scale of things. And when I say the grand scale of things, I mean in 100 years, the world is going to run on renewables. We've gone too far now. But, still, for example, the Trump administration in America or the impact on the potential change of administration in Germany last year can have a huge impact. And I sometimes feel, I don't know if you agree, the immaturity kind of comes from the constant ups and downs that we go through in that side of things.
Yes, for sure. It is like that. And beside that, I think it's the ups and downs. Maybe it's because of the politics, but when you look at the German market, for instance, 5 years ago, there weren't so many international companies involved in the German market. It was quite rare. You knew the industry, you knew the people who were in there. And now when I just look at the fairs like the Intersolar or the eWorld, there's so many new companies that I've never heard about that and wasn't like that before.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a competitive edge in Germany competing against international companies?
I wouldn't say so, because they do have a different angle for the projects and they start at a different time. And the German market, especially within the project development field, you really need to be into the market and you need to have the skills of it. Like for MaxSolar, for instance, it's a good thing to the municipalities to have reference of projects we've built like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And that's something unique, kind of.
Interesting. Just on the topic of fairs, you mentioned Intersolar and eWorld there. I think you were part of a panel at eWorld 2 weeks ago, where you spoke in front of a live audience. I know, you're a little bit nervous for doing so, but how did you find that experience?
I do like that kind of experience. It was great to talk to the people on the panel, to discuss it. And it was nice to see like the people on the fair, like the eWorld. Normally they just went by these panels, but this time there were a lot of people like really, they were slowing down and listening to us, and that was really nice to see that we got the interest.
Yeah, very interesting. And then before we kind of wrap up, there's a few questions we always ask. I think the first one I would say is going back to the point around diversity, around the studies that you did and the path that you took. And what would you tell kind of a young girl in the same position as you might be, studying engineering at university, about what their future could look like?
What their future could look like? The future it's not there yet, so they just need to take it by their hand and take the chances that come their path. They really need to take that.
In a positive fashion, I guess. Yeah, I think we already discussed a little bit about your predictions for the future. It's very, very, very hard to make a prediction, but I always ask, what are your thoughts on how the German market, in your case, will progress in the next kind of 12 to 18 months?
I think we will have a lot of collaborations within the market. 2 years ago, there was a high on collaboration, but there weren't any. And now we really need those as an industry. We need to get together, like the wind industry, the solar one, the BESS one, and we need more transparency on each other's cases to have a win-win situation afterwards.
Okay, so more of a collective approach, less individual as such.
Yes.
Yvonne, thanks so much for coming on as a guest. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think the listeners will, and I hope you did too.
Thank you, Tom.